Picture this. It's 2001, Buenos Aires. A retired school teacher walks into her bank on a Tuesday morning to withdraw her life savings. The teller looks at her, then looks at his screen, then looks back at her. "I'm sorry," he says, "your account is frozen." Not hacked, not empty, frozen, by her own government. Within 6 weeks, the peso lost 70% of its value. Her bonds, her savings account, her fixed annuity, all of it, paid out in full. Every single peso, exactly as promised. And every single peso was worth a fraction of what it had been. She wasn't robbed at gunpoint. She was robbed through arithmetic. And here's the thing that should make you deeply uncomfortable. She did everything right. This is Fin Historian, and today we're performing a financial autopsy. Not on Argentina, not on Weimar Germany, not on Venezuela, but on the 5 asset classes that have been destroyed repeatedly and predictably every single time a major currency resets. If you've never subscribed to this channel, now is the time, because what I'm about to show you isn't theory, it's a pattern, and that pattern is currently in motion. Before we get into the assets, understand the mechanism. Most people think a currency reset means wheelbarrows of cash and trillion-dollar banknotes. That's the Hollywood version. The real version is quieter and far more dangerous. A reset is any moment where the relationship between paper currency and real purchasing power is fundamentally restructured. Sometimes it's hyperinflation, sometimes it's devaluation overnight, sometimes it's capital controls, sometimes it's all three simultaneously. The common thread is always the same. Assets denominated in the old system lose value relative to assets denominated in real things. With that in mind, here are the 5 assets you need to reconsider before the next reset arrives. Asset number 1, long-term government bonds. This is the one that surprises people the most, because bonds feel safe. They are backed by the full faith and credit of the sovereign. They're rated AAA. They are the benchmark against which all other assets are measured. But here's the structural flaw hiding inside that safety. A government bond is a promise to deliver a fixed amount of currency at a future date. The key word is fixed. The key word is currency. When a government reaches the point where it mathematically cannot service its debt through taxation or growth alone, it has 3 choices. It can default explicitly, which destroys political careers. It can impose brutal austerity, which also destroys political careers. Or it can inflate, print the currency needed to pay the bonds, honor every nominal commitment, and quietly reduce the purchasing power of each payment. Inflation is politically invisible, and it is always chosen. In Weimar Germany, bondholders were paid in full, in marks that couldn't buy a postage stamp. In the United States between 1940 and 1980, long-term treasury holders lost over 70% of their real purchasing power. They were paid exactly what was promised. What was promised had been quietly redefined. Today, U.S. interest payments alone exceed $1 trillion annually, more than the entire defense budget. The Congressional Budget Office projects debt to GDP reaching 170% by 2054 under current law. Those are government numbers, not commentary, not prediction, the government's own math. The longer the bond's duration, the greater the exposure. A 30-year treasury is not a safe asset. It's a bet that the dollar will hold its purchasing power for 3 decades. Look at the trajectory. Decide if that's a bet you want to hold. Asset number 2, cash and cash equivalents. This one is painful because cash feels like the ultimate safe harbor. When markets crash, people flee to cash. When uncertainty rises, cash accumulates. But cash is not wealth. Cash is a claim on wealth, and that claim can be systematically diluted. Since 2008, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded from roughly $900 billion to nearly $8 trillion. The monetary base increased by a factor of 8 in 16 years. Consumer prices did not increase by a factor of 8, not yet, Because that excess currency was absorbed into asset markets, housing, equities, financial instruments. But here's what history shows us happens next. When the inflation embedded in asset markets begins flowing into consumer prices, cash holders absorb the full impact. Cash yields nothing. Cash has no hedge. Cash has no structural protection. In Venezuela in 2018, inflation reached 1,000,000%. A year's salary became worthless in weeks. In Zimbabwe, citizens holding local currency were annihilated. In Argentina in 2001, dollar-denominated bank deposits were frozen and forcibly converted to pesos at artificial rates. People who thought they were holding dollars discovered they were actually holding pesos. The government redefined their assets overnight. Cash is a political instrument. Its value depends entirely on political will. And when political will collides with fiscal impossibility, cash becomes the mechanism through which the state quietly transfers wealth from citizens to itself. This doesn't mean cash has no utility. It has short-term optionality. But as a long-term store of value, it has a documented failure rate across history that should give any serious person pause. Asset number 3. Fixed annuities and income insurance products. These are marketed as guaranteed income, stability in retirement, protection from market volatility, and in nominal terms, they often deliver exactly what they promise. The insurance company pays the stated amount on the stated schedule every month without fail. The number is guaranteed. The purchasing power of that number is not. An annuity is structurally a long-term bond with an extra layer of counterparty risk. Give a lump sum today. Receive fixed monthly payments for life. If inflation runs at 7%, that payment loses half its real value within a decade. If inflation runs at 15%, you are impoverished within 7 years. The insurance company is not cheating you. They're paying exactly what was agreed. The currency beneath your feet has moved. In Germany after World War I, families who spent decades faithfully paying life insurance premiums received payouts that could not buy a loaf of bread. In Hungary in 1946, prices doubled every 15 hours. Insurance policies, pensions, fixed annuities, all evaporated through arithmetic, not through fraud. This is the cruelest category because these products are almost exclusively sold to people planning for retirement, to people who have done the responsible thing. The mechanism targets the trusting, not the reckless. Understand what these products actually are before deciding how much of your retirement depends on them. Asset number 4. Certain categories of real estate. Now this one requires precision because real estate is a real asset, and under the right conditions, it can be a powerful store of value. But here's where people get badly hurt. Real estate that generates income denominated in a collapsing currency while carrying costs that rise with inflation is not a hedge. It's a trap. Commercial properties with long-term leases locked in pre-inflation rates. Vacation properties with high carrying costs and no essential utility. Urban residential real estate in jurisdictions where capital controls freeze buyer pools. During Argentina's 2001 crisis, real estate values collapsed over 50% in dollar terms. Not because the buildings disappeared, but because the buyers did. Capital controls evaporated the pool of transactions. The real estate that survives currency resets is productive. Farmland. Properties generating income in essential goods. Property in jurisdictions with stable rule of law and no capital controls. Property owned outright or financed with fixed-rate debt in the inflating currency. That last point is important. Fixed-rate mortgage debt, denominated in an inflating currency, effectively shrinks in real terms over time. The same force that destroys the bondholder benefits the borrower. But only in the right structure, only in the right jurisdiction. Those caveats are not small. In every currency crisis in recorded history, governments have imposed restrictions on property transactions. Cyprus in 2013, Venezuela ongoing. Real estate is not inherently safe. Real estate in the wrong form can be as destructive as any bond. Asset number 5. Retirement accounts with trapped capital. This is the most uncomfortable category on this list, because these are the accounts most people have spent their entire working lives building. And the vulnerability is not the assets inside the account. It's the structure of the account itself. When your capital cannot move without penalty, when access requires government permission through age restrictions and tax treatment, you have surrendered optionality to the state. You have agreed to play by rules the state can change. And states have changed these rules, repeatedly, in modern developed economies. Hungary in 2010, the government effectively nationalized private pension funds. Citizens were given a choice between transferring assets to the state system or losing state pension benefits. 97% complied. Over 10 billion euros moved from private hands to government control overnight. Poland in 2013. Approximately half of private pension fund assets were seized and transferred to the state social security system to reduce government debt figures. Argentina in 2008. 10 private pension funds worth $30 billion were nationalized. Ireland during the financial crisis. A levy was imposed on private pension funds to finance a bank bailout. These are not ancient events. These are documented actions taken by governments within the last 15 years in developed economies, affecting educated populations who believed their retirement assets were protected. The United States has not done this, but the structure that permits it exists. Over $35 trillion in U.S. retirement assets, capital that cannot flee quickly, capital that can be taxed, regulated, and under sufficient political pressure, redirected. Trapped capital is a fixed target. Fixed targets pay the price. Here's what these 5 assets have in common. They are all promises denominated in currency. They are all dependent on institutional continuity. They are all built on the assumption that the rules of the game will remain stable. And they all fail by the same mechanism when the rules change, through the only exit available to governments when their mathematics become impossible. The implicit reset. Pay every nominal promise. Redefine what the payment is worth. The pattern is not abstract. U.S. federal debt now exceeds 120% of GDP. Interest payments exceed defense spending. The Federal Reserve holds nearly $5 trillion in Treasury securities, debt purchased with newly created currency. Social Security and Medicare face combined unfunded liabilities that dwarf everything in current discussion. These are not fringe estimates. These are published projections from official sources. The question is not whether this trajectory is sustainable. It isn't. The question is, which asset classes absorb the adjustment when the mathematics finally force the issue? And history answers that question with uncomfortable consistency. The 5 assets on this list have been the primary vehicles for that wealth transfer in every major reset on record. Understanding this is not pessimism, it's pattern recognition. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. I'm not telling you what to buy. I'm showing you what history shows has failed, and why, and the mechanism beneath the failure. What you do with that information is your decision. Consult a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. If this kind of forensic analysis is what you're looking for, subscribe to FinHistorian. This channel exists to study the mechanisms that most financial content ignores, to read the autopsies before the patient dies. The next video in this series examines the 5 assets that have historically preserved wealth through every major reset since 1923. It's the other side of this equation, and you'll want to see it. I'll see you there.